Why do some ads fail while others print money on command? Why do countless businesses waste millions simply because they don't understand what actually sells? If you've ever felt overwhelmed by the noise, the gimmicks, and the hollow marketing, fluff, this is your awakening. Today we're unlocking the vault. Welcome to an episode that could permanently upgrade how you think about influence, persuasion, and business success. We're diving deep into one of the most powerful foundational texts in marketing history, Scientific Advertising, by Claude C. Hopkins. This isn't a book. It's a blueprint, a system, a testable, repeatable method for turning psychology into profits. By the end of this episode, you'll not only understand the secrets that built billion-dollar brands, you'll be equipped to test your mastery with a powerful knowledge check designed to sharpen your thinking and amplify your marketing. IQ stay until the end, a valuable book summary, an unexpected surprise, and your chance to cement these game-changing principles into your brain await. Let's decode the science of persuasion and unlock your next-level advantage. Let's begin.
Welcome to the deep dive. You're here because you want to get smart, fast, and avoid that feeling of information overload. We totally get it.
And today, we're digging into a real classic, a foundational text for anyone in advertising or, frankly, persuasion. It's Claude C. Hopkins' Scientific Advertising.
Written, over 80 years ago, and yet still incredibly relevant.
Absolutely. Victor Urbach, in the foreword, calls it timeless wisdom. And he highlights Hopkins' work. This guy was pioneering things like test marketing, couponing, sampling.
Things we take for granted now.
Exactly. And even preemptive positioning, owning that key benefit in the customer's mind before competitors even get there. He was way ahead of his time.
And his big thing was moving advertising away from just, guesswork, wasn't it? Towards something more like a science.
Precisely, based on measurable results. So our mission today is to really unpack those core principles he laid out, the fundamental laws of effective advertising he identified.
And looking at the contents headlines, psychology, being specific, test campaigns, covers a lot of ground. So where's the best place to start digging in?
I think we have to start with his absolute core concept. Advertising is salesmanship.
Simple as that.
Well, simple but profound. He argued it's salesmanship multiplied. The only purpose, the only way to judge advertising is by the sales it produces, period.
Okay, so forget vague ideas like general effect or just, keeping the name out there.
He dismissed those completely. The real test, he'd say, is asking yourself, would this approach actually work if a salesperson used it face-to-face?
That's a great filter. It makes you look differently at some ads, doesn't it? Like, would that quirky, abstract concept actually persuade someone standing in front of you?
Probably not in many cases, and that ties into his warning about fine writing or being overly focused on a unique literary style.
If it gets in the way of the sale.
Exactly. He compared it to a salesman who's trying too hard to be a charming performer, instead of actually, closing the deal. The style should serve the substance, not obscure it.
Makes sense. Now, another thing that really jumped out was his focus on offering a service in the ad, not just shouting, "Buy now." What was the logic there?
It boils down to understanding basic human nature. Hopkins was very clear. People are fundamentally interested in themselves, in their own benefit.
They care about their problems, not the advertisers need to sell something.
Right. So an ad that just demands a purchase often falls flat. But an ad that offers something genuinely useful, some kind of service or tangible benefit, that gets attention.
And he had concrete examples, didn't he? I remember reading about a brush maker.
Yes. Instead of a hard sell, the agents would offer a brush as a sort of gift just to demonstrate the quality. It provided value up front, built goodwill.
And paved the way for future sales, presumably.
Precisely. Or the coffee wagon example, offering a free trial, letting people experience the product. It's about reducing risk and demonstrating value.
Like the electric sewing machine motor, too. Offering it for a week's free trial in the home. That feels very modern, almost.
It really does. It shows confidence in the product and directly addresses the customer's perspective. What's in it for me? Let me see for myself. It flips the script from seller-focused to buyer-focused.
Okay, so it's about providing value.
Yeah.
Now, Hopkins also talks a lot about mail-order advertising. Why was that so important in his view? Like a school for advertisers?
He called it the severest test, I believe. And yes, a crucial school because the feedback was so direct and measurable.
Right. There was nowhere to hide.
Exactly. You ran an ad, and you could literally count the coupons or orders that came back tied to that specific ad. The cost and the result were right there in black and white.
So it forced discipline.
Total discipline. It led to techniques like keyed advertising, putting little codes on coupons.
So you could tell which ad pulled best.
Precisely. You could test headlines, different arguments, pictures, layouts, everything, and know definitively what worked better. Guesswork was basically eliminated.
And even small improvements mattered a lot.
Hugely, because mail order often operated on thin margins, optimizing the cost per reply or cost per sale, even by a small percentage, could be the difference between profit and loss, especially at scale.
And that drove certain styles, like the dense text and small type you often saw.
Yeah, he observed that. It wasn't about aesthetics, it was about efficiency. Those ads often crammed in a lot of information because tests proved that telling the full story converted better. Minimal wasted space, maximum information.
Function over form, dictated by the numbers.
Yeah.
And that idea tell the whole story.
Yes, very important. The principle was the more you tell, the more you sell. Especially in mail order, where the ad was your only salesman. You had to anticipate questions, overcome objections, and provide enough information for someone to make a decision right then and there.
And he felt that applied to all advertising, not just mail order.
He absolutely did. The lessons learned under that intense scrutiny, he believed, were fundamental truths about persuasion that everyone should apply.
Fascinating. Okay, let's shift to headlines. What did Hopkins see as the main job of a headline?
It's all about selection. The headline's primary purpose is to pick out the right people from the crowd, the specific audience you actually want to reach.
Not just grabbing any eyeballs.
No, grabbing the relevant eyeballs. He used that great analogy. It's like calling out someone's name in a crowd. You want the person interested in your specific offer to stop and listen.
So those really clever or blind headlines that don't immediately signal the topic, he wasn't a fan.
Not generally, no. He cautioned against them because while they might attract curiosity, they often attract the wrong people or fail to engage the people who would be interested if they knew what the ad was about.
Like newspaper headlines guiding you to the sports section or the business pages.
Exactly. They act as signposts. And the impact of getting the headline right versus wrong could be, well, enormous.
He cited some big numbers, didn't he?
Huge. He talked about tests where changing only the headline multiplied the returns by 5 or even 10 times. It just shows how critical that first impression is.
Wow. So testing headlines was crucial.
Absolutely essential. Using those keyed returns for mail order, you could pit headlines against each other and see which appeal resonated most strongly with the target audience for that specific product.
And he gave examples, like with soap, I think.
Right. A generic headline like "Keep Clean" might do okay, but "It Floats" highlighted a unique selling proposition.
A specific benefit.
Yes. But even better, he found, were headlines tapping into desires like beauty or a better complexion, because that was the core driver for many soap purchases.
Understanding the real motivation.
Precisely. Or his Audible example. Talking about a technical feature like the universal joint. Not very compelling for most buyers.
Compared
to something like the sportiest of sport bodies. That speaks to emotion, aspiration, image, things that often drive big purchases like cars. You have to address the customer's interest directly in that headline.
It always comes back to the audience, doesn't it? Okay, what about psychology? Hopkins thought advertisers needed to be psychologists, essentially.
He really did. And what's key here is his belief that human nature is pretty constant. Technologies change, media changes, but the basic psychological triggers, they endure.
So understanding those gives you leverage.
Immense leverage. If you understand psychology, you can better predict how people will react to certain approaches, certain words, certain offers. You can refine your message for maximum impact.
What were some of the psychological levers he pointed out?
Well, curiosity is a big one. Remember the puffed wheat and rice ads? Foods shot from guns. That created intrigue.
Definitely memorable.
Then there's perceived value based on price. Sometimes a higher price can paradoxically increase desire. Think of luxury goods.
Or the story of the expensive painting or hat he mentions.
Exactly. Also, the power of specific claims we'll touch on later, like paying a huge sum for a formula, it suggests value. The trustworthiness of a local guarantee versus a distant one. Little nuances.
And the framing of offers, like the try it first, pay later idea.
Yes. That subtle shift from money-back guarantee to pay in a week if you like them. The second one feels like much less risk, much less hassle for the buyer. It taps into loss aversion almost.
Clever. What else?
Oh, things like personalization, putting names and guilt on books as perceived value. Limited time offers create urgency. Offers targeted at specific groups make people feel special.
And inviting comparison with rivals, that seems counterintuitive.
Right, but it signals immense confidence in your own product. Try ours, try theirs, then decide. It can build tremendous trust.
He really covered a lot of psychological ground, even the sample debate free versus a small charge.
Yeah, the two food advertisers. Sometimes giving something away totally free can make people devalue it. A small charge can sometimes make people take the sample more seriously, implying it has real worth.
It's not always obvious what will work best.
Not at all. That's why testing was so important. But understanding these psychological principles gives you better hypotheses to test. It's about creating a positive impression, empathy, really understanding what the audience wants, like the woman selling clothing on installments, understanding her customer's financial reality.
It's really about deep customer insight married with persuasive techniques. Okay, another big pillar for Hopkins. Being specific. Why was he so against generalities?
Because they're just noise. He said things like platitudes and generalities roll off the human understanding like water from a duck. They don't stick. They don't convince.
And superlatives, best, lowest price.
Even worse, often. They sound like puffery, like exaggeration. People are naturally skeptical of those kinds of claims and tend to just mentally discount them.
So you just tune them out.
You do. But a specific claim, that's different. It feels factual. It's either true or it isn't. And Hopkins believed people generally expect advertisers in reputable places to be truthful, so a specific, concrete claim carries much more weight. It lends credibility.
And he showed how specifics make arguments stronger.
Absolutely. Take the tungsten lamp example. Saying it gives more light is weak, vague. Saying it gives 3 1/3 times the light for the same energy, that's powerful. It implies proof, measurement.
Or price reductions.
Right. A general prices slashed is okay, but prices reduced 25% is much more impactful and believable.
And he had those great real-world examples, too.
Fantastic ones. The company that boosted business by switching from lowest prices in America to the incredibly specific, our net profit is 3%. Talk about transparency.
That builds trust like crazy.
For sure. Or things like softens the beard in 1 minute or the 78-second shave. Detailing the brewing process instead of just saying pure beer, claiming your product is used by the peoples of 52 nations. Those specifics are tangible, memorable, and way more persuasive.
It forces you to substantiate your claims, really. Okay, final big principle. Tell your full story. Why did he push back against the idea that ads always need to be brief?
He saw a potential trap there. Brevity for brevity's sake wasn't the goal. His argument was, look, getting someone's attention is hard work. Once you have it, you need to make the most of it.
Don't squander the opportunity.
Exactly. Don't assume they'll see your next ad in a series. Present your strongest case, all your key selling points right then and there when you have their focus.
Because they might only see that one ad.
That was his point. Advertisers worry about repeating themselves, about monotony. But the average reader probably only encounters a specific ad once, or maybe twice. You need to give them everything they need to make a decision in that single exposure.
So find your best arguments through testing.
Yes, identify what works best.
And then put all of them in every ad.
That was his recommendation, particularly for ads aiming for direct results. He even told that story about the man choosing between a Rolls-Royce and a Marmon car.
Yeah, where one provided loads of detail and the other was very brief.
Right. And the man felt insulted by the lack of information from the brief advertiser, especially for such a significant purchase. People want information when they're seriously considering buying something, particularly something expensive or complex.
It connects back to that listener desire for thoroughness, doesn't it?
Okay.
You want to feel like you understand before you commit.
Absolutely. And Hopkins warned advertisers not to be swayed by the results of untracked general publicity ads or the opinions of other advertisers who didn't have the hard data. Stick to what you can prove works. Tell your story fully.
It really is remarkable how relevant these ideas feel, even coming from, nearly a century ago.
It's true. The core themes keep coming back. Test, measure, know your audience deeply, offer real value, be specific, be clear. These are just fundamental principles of effective communication.
So maybe a final thought for you, our listener, as you go about your day. Start looking at the advertising around you through this Hopkins lens. Which of these immutable laws, as he might have called them, do you see being followed?
And, perhaps more interestingly, which ones are most often ignored today? What do you think the cost of that oversight might be, whether it's in marketing, politics, or just everyday persuasion?
That's a great takeaway. Really makes you think. And if this has piqued your interest, definitely consider picking up scientific advertising. It's short, sharp, and packed with insights.
You won't regret it. Applying these fundamentals can really sharpen how you communicate in almost any field.
Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We hope you picked up some valuable perspectives, maybe even a few aha moments.
Until next time.
You've just absorbed the timeless, profit-proven principles from scientific advertising. But let me tell you what most will do after this. Nothing. They'll nod, agree, maybe even feel inspired, then slip right back into ineffective, unmeasured guesswork, and that's exactly how mediocrity survives. But you're here, and that means you're not average. So I challenge you, no, I dare you, to do what 99% won't. Hit that subscribe button to join the league of strategic thinkers and high performers. Obliterate that like button to show you're serious about mastery. Explore the links in the description for free resources, our community hub, and an exclusive breakdown of Hopkins' personal copy formulas. Because here, we're not building views. We're building mental weapons and market dominators. Up next, our expert panel breaks down the book's most misunderstood ideas and how to weaponize them in your career or business today. But first, it's time to prove you're not just a listener, you're a leader. This isn't a quiz. It's a mental battlefield, and it's designed to forge clarity, confidence, and command. Are you ready to rise above? Then let's begin your final test. The knowledge check starts now.